Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, St. Cloud area, welcome to this forum featuring candidates for State Legislative District 13. District 13 is represented in the Minnesota legislature by 1 senator and 2 representatives, 1 each for District 13A and District 13B. This event is being held at the Sartell Community Center, a facility that is owned and operated as a community service by the City of Sartell. We thank the City of Sartell staff for making arrangements to conduct this forum here. We are pleased that the ARC Minnesota is co-sponsoring this forum. The ARC Minnesota promotes and protects the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, actively supporting them and their families in a lifetime of inclusion and participation in their communities. We are recording this forum and will upload it to our YouTube channel. A link to the recording will be put on our website. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. This means we do not support or oppose particular political parties or individual candidates, but we do study and take positions on issues. We sponsor candidate forums because we believe informed citizens are the foundation of democracy. I am Linda Salp, a member of the St. Cloud Area League, and I will moderate this forum. Susan Smith and Diane Bublitz will be the timekeepers. We moderate candidate forums according to a standard protocol that is designed to be fair and open. The candidates have accepted the format in advance. Audience members, you received a summary of the forum procedures, and I'm going to read them to you again now. No campaign or partisan materials, signs, buttons, literature, printed apparel may be worn, displayed, or distributed in the forum room. Such materials can be offered on a table provided outside. Please silence personal devices such as cell phones and pagers. The League of Women Voters, St. Cloud area reserves the right to tape and photograph this event and publish the results. Audience members, except for authorized persons, should refrain from using any electronic devices to record this forum. Anyone doing so in a way that is disruptive or distracting may be asked to leave. Questions will come from the audience in written form on the cards provided. Question facilitators will receive, sort, and forward audience questions to the moderator. Questions of a related nature may be condensed and combined. Questions must be brief, and lengthy statements will not be accepted. Questions should relate to specific issues the candidates would normally address as public officials in this particular office. Questions on unrelated topics or of a personal nature will not be allowed. All questions become the property of League of Women Voters, St. Cloud area. All candidates will be given a chance to answer each question. Participants are asked to remain quiet while candidates are speaking so that everyone can hear responses. All applause will be held until the forum is complete and the moderator invites it. Audience members, you are invited to address questions to the candidates using the cards provided. We also received many questions by email from the public in advance. Questions of a related nature may be condensed and combined. All questions must be relevant to specific issues the candidates would normally address as members of the Minnesota legislature. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer all questions. All District 13 candidates who will appear on the November 8th general election ballot were invited to participate in this forum. They are, for Senate District 13, Alyssa Brickman, Jeff Howe. House District 13A, Melissa Bromenschenkel, Tim O'Driscoll. House District 13B, Lisa DeMuth and Andrea Robinson. I am pleased to welcome and introduce these candidates participating in this event who are seated by office and by alphabetical order by last name. The candidates' opening statements will be offered in the order they are seated. After that, the order for answering will be rotated in a random order. Candidates, you will each be allowed the following amounts of time: 1 minute for an opening statement, 1.5 minutes to answer each question from the audience, and 1 minute for a closing statement at the end of the question and answer period. A timekeeper will hold up a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left. The red card that says time means please finish your sentence and stop. State legislators have two important responsibilities: to both represent their districts and to enact laws that pertain to Minnesota as a whole. Senators are elected for 4-year terms and representatives serve 2-year terms. Candidates, we are ready to begin opening remarks. You each have 1 minute to state why you are seeking the office of Minnesota legislator. And we will begin with Alyssa.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alyssa Brickman, and I am running to represent you in Senate District 13. First, I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and to ARC for hosting tonight. It is so important that the people in the community have access to their legislatures. I am very happy to be here to answer your questions. I live with my husband in Sauk Rapids, and we've raised 5 children together in the community, 2 of which are special needs. I own a Fleeting Moment Photography, work as a special education paraeducator at Westwood School, and I'm also a community organizer and lifelong volunteer. I believe that my ability to create space for civil and productive conversation will bring a sense of empathy and compassion back to our government. We need representatives that represent us. As your state senator, I would always seek the guidance of my constituents when deciding how I would vote and never lose sight of the fact that my decisions impact each and every Minnesotan every day. Thank you.
Jeff?
Well, thank you. I'm Senator Jeff Howe. I grew up in a little town in Chicago, west of here, near the South Dakota border, and I've raised my wife and I, Sherry, have raised our 4 children in Rockville. They went to Rickory High School. I've served 38 years in the military, 27 years in the fire service. I've had the opportunity to be a council member for the city of Rockville. I've served 6 years in the House of Representatives, and now I've served 4 years in the state Senate. It is important that, I think the key important skill that I have is building relationships. And without those relationships, you cannot get anything done in life, nor at the legislature. And that's the key to working across the aisle to get things done, and that's the key to make things happen. So that's why I still run. I still believe I carried, well, I think I carried over 60 bills, and I still believe that not all of them got passed, so we still have more work to do.
Tim?
Thank you and good evening and welcome to everyone here this evening that's joining us. A little bit of the way of my background. I am a Sartell native. My dad was the very first city employee in the city of Sartell, and he was the police chief. And so law enforcement is very near and dear to my heart, and I continue to support law enforcement and the work that these men and women do. My father would be very proud to see what's happened in this community over the years, coming from one person as the police chief to a department of over 25 sworn officers where you can have a career in law enforcement in the community. He taught me that you can't take, you have to give back to the community. That's one of the reasons why I ran for city council, served as mayor in this town, and have served in the legislature for the past 12 years. I know what it takes to get things done. I have the ability to be able to get things done, and I have a track record that shows that I can get things done. Most recently, Senator Howe and I authored a bonding bill that brought $5 million to the city of Sartell that has provided money for construction on a road that will link this part of the community to the medical district. And the city right now is in the position of being able to bring in a large number of businesses to help the economic growth of this community. I'm proud to be the legislator from this area and look forward to your vote in the future. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I am State Representative Lisa Dameth. I serve in District 13A, and I am in the last year of my second term, seeking a third term. My husband Nick and I raised 4 children. We live in Cold Spring, and I was actually born in Paynesville, which is part of the district, so that's always fun to get back into that community. We own a business in that area also, and I'm involved in the business that we own in Cold Spring. Like I said, we have 4 children, and we actually have 6 grandchildren. The oldest is 12, and the youngest is going to be 3 weeks tomorrow. I had the honor of serving my community for 11 years on the Rocori School Board, and that prepared me for my role as a legislator. I had the opportunity to learn how you listen to your community, and then you make the best decisions that you can for the most. My job in the legislature offers me the opportunity to listen to our community, to make decisions that are going to first impact in a positive way District 13A, and then also how it affects the rest of our state. I look forward to the questions this evening, look forward to your vote in November. Thank you.
My name is Andrea Robinson. I'm employed by the Minnesota Department of Transportation, where I'm the Small Business Contracting Supervisor for the Office of Civil Rights. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's degree in public administration. I was born and raised in central Minnesota. Myself and my husband live in Cold Spring, and we've raised 7 children and been a home to 3 foster children. I found my voice in advocating against racism and bullying in school that my children had experienced. Subsequently, my family became the target of a hate crime. This experience fueled my passion to find common ground in uncommon circumstances, and we need candidates that have real life experiences. We have too much at stake. Minnesotans are struggling to make ends meet. Infrastructure in Minnesota is failing, and our personal freedom is the cornerstone of debate. I'm still just a Minnesota mom, but now I'm a Minnesota mom on a mission to represent all individuals of District 13A at the Capitol.
Thank you, and we're ready for our first question, which will go to Tim, if you want to sort the microphone. The question is, given the dual responsibilities of representing your district and working on behalf of the state of Minnesota as a whole, do you think District 13 has any specific challenges? And if so, what are they, and what will you do to address those challenges?
That's a great question. The dual role, as we all know, the legislature needs to send an annual budget. The legislature also needs to make sure that the laws are fair as they're implemented here in the state of Minnesota, and that's all the laws that we have to follow, whether they are traffic laws, whether they are crime laws, whether they are voter laws. They all need to be followed, and they all need to be supported. The special needs that our district has, and I'll talk about it as a whole, we have a lot of transportation needs. One of the things that you're going to find out is that the central Minnesota area replicates the Twin Cities and the entire state of Minnesota. There's some urbanized areas here, Sartell, Sauk Rapids. We also have some rural areas, and a lot of those rural roads and bridges right now are just about ready to be in a failed position. That affects our ability to get commerce underway, to be able to bring farm to market. Many times in the spring, roads are closed because of the weight restrictions, and we continue to hear about the need to underscore and support our transportation needs here in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you for the question. Thinking of the dual roles, I think it's very important that our legislature, we are citizen legislators, and we work and we have part-time jobs as legislators. That allows us to be in our communities and hearing directly from the people what matters to them and how we can best serve them. We're not just down in St. Paul all the time not listening. I think in District 13A we have a unique makeup where we do have our agriculture community, we have strong manufacturing, and we have a number of small businesses that do fuel our economy. Each one of those businesses, the way that people make their money, it matters. It creates strong families when we can support ourselves. And so when we looked at frustrating shutdowns that were unnecessary, we heard from business owners saying, this is how we support our family. This is how we support our community. Work with us. Having that dual role gives us that opportunity to hear directly from people. So when it comes to roads, bridges, keeping those strong, also our school systems, and then the healthcare that we have right in access. There's a number of areas in greater Minnesota that don't have easy access to dentists and doctors. We have that in our area. That helps make our community strong, and I think that's a benefit that we have, that we must encourage and find ways to keep strong.
Jeff?
Well, thank you. You know, that it's that dual role is very important, and sometimes it is tough to manage, because sometimes what you do when you look at the entire state and the decisions you make for the entire state doesn't always jive and work with your local community. And sometimes you have to look out and vote for what's great for the state instead of what is great for your local community. And that's a tough decision when you have to make those decisions. But I will tell you, we've got this, you know, we have a unique area here, like Representative O'Driscoll said, it's urban and rural. We have mining, we have resorts, we have ag, we have a wide breadth, and we have manufacturing. So it's a wide breadth of things, and which makes us unique compared to many other parts of the state. And you know, but there are times when things come up, you have to stand for your community and what's good. But it's kind of unique with transportation, education. Education, we find some of our schools here are well funded. Some of our schools get thousands of dollars less a student than other schools. We have to figure that out, and we have to make funding our kids level across the board so all schools and all kids get the same type of funding.
Being in what we would consider a more rural area of greater Minnesota, one of the biggest things that is overlooked is the transportation needs. The funding specifically, or not specifically, primarily goes to the metro and overlooks the years and decades that our roads and bridges have not been maintained. And so being fiscally responsible means that when we have the opportunity to have federal funds or matching funds, that we do what we can to keep those funds. Passing bills that allow matching funds to have roads in greater Minnesota, even in the metro, maintained. When we don't do that, we're spending more money. It's incredibly important to be fiscally responsible, but also to bring the life experiences that we have in this district that other representatives have not experienced.
So I'm focusing on education right now, and I think that that's absolutely true. I think some of the schools are fully funded. Some of the schools, the property taxes, you know, there's less property, so there's less available funds. So what I'd really like to do is make sure that our state actually funds our schools. It should be fully funded. It should not be based on our property taxes. I think that's a real problem we have right now. I do think that infrastructure is a huge thing, but I also think that high-speed internet needs to go to all of our locations. We have lots of rural areas who do not have that. And we realized over COVID, over the shutdowns, how important that was. And not only did we realize that, we realized how much better our lives can be for people who maybe are shut-ins or maybe who are disabled and are not able to work. Going to work and through transportation from rural areas. You can do that now through telework. So I think that's really important. And I think that the other thing that's really important is we have to think about the big pictures here. So like climate change, like that's a really huge thing, and we can really affect the watershed in Minnesota. And those are things that we have to think about, not only in our rural areas, but also in our metro areas. But they're not thinking about that as much there as that we are here, because we're actually seeing those watershed problems. So I think that those are things that we really have to talk to the constituents and find out exactly what's going on with you. Thank you.
And we'll start with our next question, and the first person will be Lisa. The 2022 legislative session adjourned on May 23rd with no agreements on how to invest the multi-billion-dollar surplus. What do you think should be done with this surplus? And what do you think the spending priorities should be in the Minnesota legislature going forward?
Thank you for the question. The end of this session was incredibly frustrating. We thought that more would happen during that time. We didn't have a bonding bill that was done, just as an example. It's important to remember that our government was fully funded within the first year of the biennium. So any additional spending was going to be just that, it was going to be additional. An important thing to look at when spending state money, and that's all of our tax dollars, is to make sure that it's spent on one time, it's not spent on ongoing, when there's a surplus, that it's not ongoing, that would put the state into a detrimental position later on. Looking at one-time funding with a surplus would have made sense, and we couldn't come to agreement on that. It's also really important to realize that Minnesota is the 6th highest individual tax base or tax rate, and that needs to change. We also know that for our corporate taxes, we're the 3rd highest, and then property taxes, we're the 19th highest. What I'm looking forward to doing, getting back in January, is changing that. We need to end the tax on Social Security completely. After that, then we need to take a look at reducing that bottom tax tier so all Minnesotans benefit from it, that it's not just wasted money or it's not going into other things, but everyone would feel that tax relief so we can have a strong economy and keep going with that. Thank you.
Tim.
The surplus that we have, I always explain to people that when you talk about getting a job and your employer says you're going to get $90,000 a year, and let's say you start on January 1st, there is no guarantee that on December 31st that you're going to have that job or that you're going to have stayed with that job. So there's not a guarantee that you're going to have $90,000 or $50,000 for wages that year. That's what these surpluses are, estimates of that. At a point in time, we believe we will have X many dollars in the state coffers. That money can appear and disappear based on economic conditions. The thing that we're experiencing right now, and everyone is firsthand, is inflation. It is eating the daylights out of middle and lower income people right now. A lot of those folks are on fixed incomes with Social Security. We need to get rid of the Social Security taxes in Minnesotans. That will immediately put money into people's hands to be able to spend money, to be able to have that, to meet their needs. We also need to invest in infrastructure. The cost of roads and bridges are going to only go up. Let's continue to fund those. That is the lifeblood of moving our goods and services from market to manufacturing and our way of getting around here in this country. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of that surplus that's there will probably be eaten up by the inflation that we're seeing. Today, we learned that the producer price index is 8.2% year over year, and everybody's sitting on pins and needles to see what the consumer price index will be tomorrow. Folks, we are in some very, very trying times. We have to give people their money back.
A huge priority should be being transparent and responsible. When we have a surplus to the magnitude we did, we need to address why that happened. Minnesotans are struggling, families are struggling. It should be a priority to be responsible, to address how it happened, but then never walk away from the table and leave it there. The largest infrastructure bill passed, and we had matching funds, and because there was not compromise, we walked away from that. Infrastructure is huge, that cannot happen. Education and public safety need to be priorities. We need to fund pensions of officers to attract new officers to come on. Education is our future, and we have schools and children that are not being educated at the same level that we see across the state. So it comes down to being fiscally responsible, accountable, and what we want in the future.
Thank you. One of the main reasons I chose to run for Senate is the lack of staff and support in our public schools, especially in special education. So have you heard of cross-subsidy funding? So cross-subsidy funding basically is the amount of money it's actually costing the school from what we're actually getting paid. So $833 per student, and that's the average cost of what we're missing. So depending on the district, that could be up to $1 million that is coming out of the district's money instead of what we're able to do within our schools. So those are very important funds, and I think that that's where we could put some money, but I also think that public safety is absolutely important. We need to fully fund our police department, we need to fully fund training, and we need to make sure that mental health is included in that, and I think that that's just another huge important aspect of what we need to do with that money. And Social Security tax, I absolutely agree, we should definitely eliminate that. I also think that we need to equalize our property taxes. So there's ways of doing that. There's ways of making it so that people are not paying an insane amount of money in certain places and others.
Well, in my real life, my real job, I also do housing inspections. So just this week, we were going and doing some apartment inspections. And I will tell you, there are people that are just living from not paycheck to paycheck, but they're living from hand to mouth. There are some people that I looked with their kitchens, they've got nothing in the cupboard. And we need to fix that. And the way I think we need to fix it is, we need to, we've got billions of dollars sitting down there as a surplus, we need to cut some taxes. We need to let them have more money in their pocket. You know, we talk about the Social Security tax, and we need to eliminate that because people say we're losing our seniors. They're moving out of here, you know, they're going south to the warmer weather. Well, I'll tell you, we're not only losing our seniors, we're also losing our young professionals that are going south. They're going to other places because they get to keep more of their paychecks. Why work here when you can go elsewhere and keep more of your money? So it's not just the seniors that are leaving, we're losing our young professionals. Transportation, we need to continue to fund that. And the push to electric as a fuel is gonna really cut into how we fund transportation. We need to take all of the money from the automotive parts sales tax and pass that bill and take it out of the general fund and fund small cities and townships so they can repair their roads, because right now townships get a little, small cities under 5,000, which is mostly cities in our district, get nothing.
Thank you, and Jeff, you're going to be first to answer the next question. Would you support increased gun control measures such as red flag laws and universal background checks? And just to be clear, red flag laws allow police, family members, or doctors to petition a court to take away someone's firearms if they feel that person is a threat to themselves or others.
No, I do not support those because of the simple fact that with red flag laws, it bypasses your due process. Somebody can file a complaint, and the next thing you know, they're coming to take your guns. I think right now, due process, they can still take your guns. If they come and you're a problem, and they take you, let's say, to the mental, put you up in, well, it used to be 2 Fs at the hospital. My days of being an EMT aren't there anymore, so I'm not quite sure where what floor the mental health facility is on anymore. But when they put them in there for a 72-hour hold, whether it's in detox or as a 72-hour hold, that's their opportunity to actually go through the court system, go and schedule that hearing so they can do the due process, and if they do find through the hearing that that's an issue, then they can have their due process, their day in court, and possibly put a hold on those guns. But without due process, you're violating the Constitution. And if they're a threat, fine and dandy. Go through the process and take that, those steps. But without that, all it takes is someone to be upset with you, make a phone call, especially if they know you're a deer hunter, and they're gonna do that just before deer hunting, so now you can't go deer hunting, or whatever, waterfowl hunting or pheasant hunting. We need due process. Thank you.
I'm a proud gun owner. I believe that it is a right and louder? Okay. Right. I'm a proud gun owner. It's a personal right. I don't think our rights should be infringed upon. When it comes to the red flag law, I believe that there are other avenues. Once you have your right and there's a responsibility, and there's other avenues to ensure that individuals in particular situations are safe for themselves and others, and that is not through red flag laws. There's other avenues in courts. There's other avenues with mental health facilities, but I believe any infringement on individual rights is not for the government to decide.
Alyssa?
So I just attended a suicide awareness meeting yesterday, actually, and we found out how high the rate of suicide is for our agricultural community, and it's very high. It's 1.5 times the amount of any other community. I think saying that, I know that guns are a right, absolutely. I know that, especially in rural areas, you need them. And I would not want to take them away, but I also know that if someone is saying something like they're going to hurt themselves, it can be an hour until the time that they do that. An average is an hour. So if we have to go through a huge due process, what would be best is our community saying, hey, let me have those for a weekend. Can I just hold those and make sure that you're okay? That would be the best way. But do I think that a red flag law, if it's going to protect the person who might be ready to hurt themselves or someone else, I think we all have to think about what's common sense. We have to be responsible gun owners, and I also own a gun. So I just really think that responsibility is number one when it comes to gun ownership. I do believe that universal background checks, why not? We want to keep our children safe, and that is something that if we can do that, I'm happy to have them do universal background checks.
Jim?
We don't need more gun laws. What we need to do is need to enforce the laws we already have. Every one of these laws that we're talking about tonight exists under another form in the state of Minnesota. The other thing that was mentioned here just a few moments ago about persons going to possibly hurt themselves or others, we have 911. That's what the folks from the police department and other rescuers come out to help and intervene. The unfortunate part about it is we've demonized law enforcement people across this country, and no one wants to be in law enforcement anymore. So that doesn't help our situation when we do that. We undermine our safety in this state and the safety in this country. Your legislature, by the way, appropriated money this past year, as we did in previous sessions, to help for farmers, psychological help for farmers, to be able to get the help that they need. It's tough being a farmer out there right now. It's tough being a Minnesotan right now. Heck, it's tough being an American right now. Let's enforce the laws that we have instead of putting additional laws out there. Let's fund our police department. Let's show some respect for law again. That'll go a long way in solving a number of our problems.
And Lisa?
Thank you. I do not support red flag laws. As Representative O'Driscoll took my answer because he got to answer right before me, what I do support, and I know that we need to do in Minnesota, is actually having our judicial system and our prosecutors prosecute the laws that are already on the books. That is where our biggest failure is letting criminals off the hook before they should be. There's downward departures going on sentencing. that needs to stop too. We have usually a 40% chance of people that should be in custody when they're not safe, and they're let out on our streets, and that's where a number of the gun violence and the things that are happening across our state with violent crime. We need to support the laws that are on the books. We need to make sure that those are enforced, and it will keep all of us safer.
Thank you. And our next question, and Andrea, we're going to start with you for the next question. Would you vote in favor of a constitutional amendment banning abortion in Minnesota? If so, would you allow for exceptions in the case of rape or incest?
I will not vote for a constitutional amendment banning abortions. It is a medical procedure that is an individual decision made between a physician and a patient.
Alyssa?
Thank you. No, I absolutely believe that the right to having an abortion is a health right. I believe that women's rights, if we start taking away women's rights, we're going to start on a battle of the hill of the rights that start going away. And I am not willing to do that. I will fight for the rights of my constituents.
Lisa?
If there were to be, right now, abortion is already constitutionally protected in the state of Minnesota. The change in Roe has not changed that. We have Doe v. Gomez that is on the books, and so that is already protected. What I will tell you is I am pro-life, and I do support life from conception until natural death, and I'm not gonna waver on that. That's where I stand on it. But in addition to that, no, there's more to that. It's not just would I agree with banning abortion, which I will not. I'm still pro-life, I'm gonna do that. But I think there are other things that we need to do to support people that are maybe having an unexpected pregnancy. If a woman is facing that, she needs to have some options, and those can be either financial help during that pregnancy. We need to increase supports that would support adoption if that mom does not want to raise her child. If she does choose to raise her child, she needs to have the opportunity to continue or get an education, and that can come with supports for childcare that is so expensive. And it is such a shortage in our state. We need to make sure that there's adequate childcare so that mom can go ahead and have the career that she would like to have and support families in that way. I have been a single mom. I know how hard it is. And without family support coming around me to help me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I have done it. I know it is hard and it can be done, but it takes all of us working together to protect life.
Jeff?
Well, I think Lisa said it well, that the Gomez decision by the state Supreme Court already protects the abortion issue, and any constitutional amendments are voted on by the citizens of this state. The legislature does not enact constitutional amendments. So that would, the only way the current status is going to change is either with the vote of the people for a constitutional amendment, or another court decision by the state Supreme Court. I don't see either one of those things happening anytime soon. But I will tell you that I'm pro-life. I vote to protect life. I think that it's one of God's miracles that He gives us, and I think we should do everything we can to ensure that folks get the opportunity, as all of us have been given the opportunity for life. And I hope to protect that God-given right to everyone to choose and to continue to take nourishment and breath as long as they so shall choose, I guess I'm trying to say. So I'm a believer from wound to grave that we should do all we can to protect life.
Tim?
I am pro-life. I would support, well, let me step back and talk about this. There's been a lot of misinformation in the media that says that Roe has banned abortion in this country. It has not. It has taken it back to the states for a state decision. And I know that what the statement I'm about to make is going to ruffle some folks, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg advised the court that the original Roe v. Wade decision was a faulty decision that was made on pretense that were not what the court was sold a bill of goods on. And unfortunately, we don't know how she would have voted because she has passed away since then. But it's very possible that she could have upheld the Constitution in this country and said, no, that's a states' rights issue. I may believe abortion, but it's a states' rights issue. And we're going to put it back to the states to be able to make that decision. As soon as the Roe v. Wade decision was made, there was a district court case that happened in Hennepin County, and the judge said, all these laws that have been long-standing laws in the state of Minnesota that have protected women, have shown women their options, were ruled unconstitutional by this judge. And our current Attorney General said, yeah, I'm not going to go and enforce those. So what has the Roe v. Wade decision done in Minnesota? It's made abortion more prevalent, most likely less safe. And I have joined bipartisan with my colleagues in the legislature to support the licensing inspection of abortion clinics, so that women who do choose that as an option have an understanding that when they go in, their health is going to be protected. That's not too much to ask for your fellow human being, is it? To be able to be safe and have an inspection. Hospitals are, doctors' offices are, abortion clinics aren't. Things you don't hear every day in the news.
Thank you, and the next question will be you first, Alyssa. What should be the legislative role, if any, in determining school curriculum and what is taught in classrooms throughout the state of Minnesota?
I think that's not really the legislative role. That's the role of the Minnesota Department of Education. We need to give that to them. They do a great job. I work in a school and I often hear things said that are not true. They're very false narratives that are going around. And I invite you to come and volunteer at our schools. We have a lack of staff right now. So even today I was talking and we said, we could definitely use some parent volunteers, some grandparent volunteers. So there's really no reason for legislature to get involved in education except for the funding.
When it comes to curriculum in school, one thing that we've lost sight of over the past few years is standardized testing in the curriculum that we have in schools. The legislature does have the ability to add additional curriculum, which I think the funding of that, which includes trade programs. Now, when it comes to the level to the specific curriculum, of course, the Department of Education, and that power is given by the legislature. They do have a role with funding, they do have a role with the power. All curriculum taught in schools in Minnesota should be the same curriculum taught regardless of where the school resides. So there are standards. Right now we see massive debates in school boards and parents fighting over what is and isn't taught. The reality is the Department of Education already decides what that curriculum is. Should teachers go on their own and teach additional curriculum? That's a very gray area where we need to stay in line with what the standards are. And again, the legislature has a responsibility giving that to the Department of Education funding it.
Lisa.
As I mentioned in my introduction, I had the opportunity to serve my community for 11 years on the Rocori School Board. We know that the state sets the standard, but local control is the best way for our schools to educate their kids. They know what works better in their community. The standard is still the same. But the curriculum, there's choices out there in the way that that is done. It's important also to remember that our early childhood, so I'll say E12, 12th grade, so our E12 education budget is 40% of our state's budget. That is the largest spending in one area in our state's budget. Yet, we have some of the worst achievement gaps in the country. So I can tell you, by spending more money is not helping our kids learn the basics of reading, of writing, of math, and then also to be good citizens too. We are failing in that. We need to completely rehaul the way that we do education funding in the state of Minnesota so that we have outcomes that actually educate our kids so that they can go into the workforce or into higher education. I was in a meeting earlier today and I heard one of the most distressing stats that I heard, and we were talking about the juvenile crime situation across our state. The average of juvenile offenders, the average age of that first interaction arrest is 8 years old. And overwhelmingly, those 8-year-olds that are already in the system cannot read and are already failing in school. That's where we need to change it. We don't need to fight about curriculum. We need to actually educate our kids.
Tim?
When it comes to educational standards, two things. Number one, we have a 3-branch government. We've got the judicial branch, we've got the legislative branch, and we've got the executive branch. The legislative branch is the check on the administrative or the executive branch, which is where the Department of Education is. I would not, and I don't like the way that the Department of Education runs independent and afoul of the legislature on this. And the challenges that you have is you're going to get some things that are going to be promulgated away from the legislature through rulemaking that you're not going to like. And we're starting to see some of those things surface. Back when I got my teaching license and was educated, we used to have in the state of Minnesota, you know, on the school bus when it comes by, ISD. I is for independent school district, meaning that the school districts have the ability to make some decisions about what the kids in that district should be learning based on the norms and the values of that district. So we had what's called a PER committee. You plan, evaluate, and review and adjust accordingly. We've gotten away from that now. St. Paul gets to make all the decisions. And dare I say, the decisions that have been made haven't always been in the best interests of the students. To be able to get skills, to be able to earn a living, to be productive citizens in the community. I'm just going to leave you with this thought for right now as well. The school districts of Minneapolis and St. Paul get double the amount of the students in Sarge House, Sauk Rapids, Avon, Albany, and Holdingford get. Double the amount of student aid. So if I want to talk about equity and equality, there's a great place to start funding our greater Minnesota schools.
Jeff?
Well, I said it before, we need to equalize how we fund schools in this state, but we also need to allow school districts to determine how they teach their kids. Because the school districts should be run by the parents, because they vote for the school board members. So that is how that should operate, and they should have a voice at that local level on how and what their students learn. You know, it is that we still have standardized testing, but how you get to those standards should be up and is up to the school district, and that is getting changed by the Department of Education over and above and without the legislative input. So I think we need to dial that back and allow the school districts to make those decisions. Either that or the state should start buying all the textbooks for all the school districts, and we can we can set them to boarding schools from now on, and it'll be state boarding schools. Is that what we're looking for? I don't think so. So hopefully we don't end up there. and we end up with school boards that can make those decisions and make sure our kids are taught the right things.
Thank you, and our next question will begin with Tim. The Minnesota End-of-Life Options Act, modeled after the Oregon Death with Dignity Act, would allow terminally ill, mentally capable adults to receive medication from their doctor or licensed healthcare provider that they could self-ingest for a peaceful death if their suffering were to become intolerable. The bill includes safeguards against abuse. What is your position on this issue?
I think I've generally answered this question when the abortion question came up. I am pro-life from conception till natural death. None of us gets to draw the cards that we want in our lives, and quite frankly, as a youth with some of the health issues that I had, I was in a lot of pain and in a lot of discomfort at times in my life. I don't know. I just don't think that if you're going to be pro-life, starting to work on the ends to the middle is the right way to do this. The unborn and the persons who are disabled, diseased, aged, that just doesn't seem right. Just does not seem right.
Alyssa?
That has to be a really bad place to be, right? You're terminally ill and you think that that's the best option for you. To me, I think that means that we need to do more for people who are in those situations. I don't know, I'd have to think a lot more about that. That's something I really haven't thought about much. So I do believe in the right to choose, but I also believe that we need to be trying to give these people the best life that we can and the most support that we can. And so I think mental health is actually a really huge part of that. So funding our mental health programs, getting more things out there for, like, yes, we do have one for agriculture workers and farmers. There could be things like that. There could be ones for police officers. There could be ones for firefighters. There could be the same kind of hotline that we've used already for agriculture workers that has been working. Something like that. I think we just need to give more options there for that. It would just be a really sad decision to have to make.
Jeff?
I'm not a fan. I wouldn't support that. I firmly believe with the medications and what's available out there now, you can probably having my mother just go through something like this, and they provide enough drugs and stuff that it basically sends them on their way, I think, sooner than what should be done. So I think that that's already out there. I think it's already available, and I don't think we need another law in the books to make it any easier than it already is.
Lisa?
To reiterate, I do support life from conception to natural death. I would not support an end-of-life act in any way. But what I do know is that our medical professionals and also those working in hospice and long-term care are incredible people that can help get the help that's needed for the patient and the loved ones that are surrounding them during that time. And I can remember as my grandmother was passing away, and she had helped raise me, she was passing away in 2010 at the nursing home at that time. What they did and how they cared for not just her, but our entire family is a model to be an example all the way across. I think that there are medical interventions that can help, but not choosing when someone's life would end. I would not support that. I am pro-life.
I would not support end-of-life legislation. One of the huge concerns is a person wishing to end their life. I would find that hard to say the individual is mentally sound. There are other avenues to provide support, and I simply do not support the assistance of ending a human life.
Thank you, and Lisa, you will have the next question. Federal laws such as the ADA and the Help America Vote Act seek to ensure voters with disabilities have equal access to the ballot. How will you support polling place accessibility, curbside voting, and early voting measures that allow legally eligible voters with disabilities to cast their ballots?
Thank you for the question. With our early voting that already started back in September, it gives people ample time to vote, whether you want to do that early or if you want to actually do that on November 8th, it's up to you. But there can be, you can go in early to the service center or to the county office, or you can request that ballot. All of our facilities are ADA compliant, so we know there is no challenge for people to get in that way. You can bring someone with, if needed, to help you in that process. But I think our laws and what is already happening with voting when it comes to the ADA accessibility are already answered. I think there are deeper issues with our voting that need to be addressed, but to answer this question, I think ADA accessibility for voting is already handled.
Tim?
A number of years ago, we had received some federal grants in the state of Minnesota, as did others, to help improve this process. No one has come to my office and said, you know, we have these deficits right now as far as the inability for persons with disabilities to be able to vote. I guess I'd like to know more about what that is, and then we can then dial in specifics. But HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, was money that was made available to be able to make buildings accessible, to be able to provide polling places or booths at the polling locations that would be able to allow for the reading of the names of candidates and different things. We years ago used to have to provide our name and say our name and spell our name so that that could be used for persons with disabilities who might not have sight capabilities to be able to hear. So I'm in favor of having everybody have access to legal voting. And again, I'm not really familiar because no one's come to me and said, these are the specifics that we need to be looking at. Certainly willing to take a look at it, but this is the first I've heard that we have another issue or that this could be an issue again going forward.
Jeff?
Well, keep in mind that the ADA is actually a civil, it's a federal law that is civilly enforced. It's enforced by lawyers. Minnesota has the Minnesota Accessibility Code that building officials, when a building is either remodeled or constructed, that is what we use in the state of Minnesota to ensure that we have accessibility for folks. So I have not heard of anybody having a problem accessing a polling place. I will say that a few years ago, when I went to vote in a primary, the seat administrator there, or the election judge, actually asked me to use the well, it's a, and I don't know what it's the name of it, but it's it's to help those with disabilities vote, and it's a little different. It's kind of a screen touch thing. Because it never gets used, they wanted someone to use it, so I volunteered to use it, and it worked out just fine. So I don't see, no one's come to me either to say that we have any issues with that, but I think that the laws in place must be doing a fairly good job because no one's contacted me with any issues to make any changes.
Individuals with disabilities should have the exact same opportunities as able-bodied individuals. That goes beyond simply ADA compliance and the way our buildings are constructed. We need to ensure that our election judges are fully versed in the needs of our communities that serve the disabled, and that includes partnering beforehand with entities that serve the disabled to know what those specifics are, to ensure that everyone has the ability to vote, whether they choose to do that through early voting or they choose to do that on the day of elections.
Yep, absolutely. I believe that it ranks very high in the ability to vote. We know that from the percentage of people who vote. But I will say that people like maybe on the autism spectrum disorder could use some more help. So I could see absolutely doing something like that, having people versed in that so that they're able to help along with that. I will say I worked at the polls last time, and I was able to help facilitate the curbside voting, and I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful that we give so many different options for people so that if they don't feel like they want to get out of their car, they could have curbside voting. And I thought that was wonderful. But yes, I agree with you, Andrea. I think if we work with someone like Art, who would be able to tell us what kind of things that we could be looking at, and make sure that we are trained and that the poll workers are trained in that.
Thank you. And Andrea, you'll start the next question. Across the state, there are significant disparities in access to quality education, healthcare, childcare, and housing. What, if anything, can the legislature do to address these disparities?
Well, the first way is the opportunity for citizens to vote for individuals that have real life experiences, that can bring those experiences to the Capitol. Having individuals that live in different areas of the state that have individual experiences brings something to the table when we're making our legislation, when we're on boards, ensuring that all voices are heard. So the most important part is through your representative and selecting someone that best represents your needs and your community's needs.
Jeff?
You know, I think there's many different facets to this, but we have lost so many medical facilities because of the way our health insurance programs work and our intervention into, it seems like we're sliding further and further into a single payer system. You go to many of these areas, they've lost their health care facility. They have to drive hours to get to a doctor. We have a large monopoly. It seems like we've carved the state up and they're monopolized by one medical provider or another. There's no competition any longer. They set the rates. You either go there or you don't go. Many areas don't have even a question as far as what insurance they can have. They've got one provider, one insurance carrier that's available to them, and one medical provider, and they're locked in. That's all they get. Many of our states, many areas of our state are like that. We need to do something to provide competition back out there, to regulate the prices that are going on, and to provide people options. And that doesn't only go for the healthcare and all that facets, and education and everything. Competition brings prices down and gives us better options. And that's what we need to do.
Lisa?
This is a big question for only a minute and a half, so I'm going to talk really fast. The disparities that are faced are across the board, across our state, but they're very unique to each area. So I, again, completely support local control. Our local areas know what the people in that local region need the best. And so that local control within our schools, within our cities, and within our townships is very important. When we talk about disparities in education, and I know that funding was brought up earlier, and the cross-subsidy was brought up earlier, keep in mind that that cross-subsidy that is being faced by our districts is because our federal government is not paying their promised 40% to our districts. We need to hold our federal Congress and senators, we need to hold them accountable and say, pay the districts what you actually promised when we were going to provide special ed to our students. Pay what is promised before you put that on our backs. That's the first part. The other thing is I've had a chance to work in the area of childcare. Okay, not me personally, but in the area in the legislature working on the issues of our child care shortage. I have served on the Family Child Care Task Force. We've worked on some modernization of licensing and trying to make sure that we have adequate child care for all areas of our state. What I can tell you with that is in Minneapolis, in the metro area, our child care centers provide 80% of the care. But in greater Minnesota, our family child care providers provide 80% of the care with only about 20% going to centers. So that's local control and how it works, and we stand up the child care to provide an opportunity for people to get to work and get the education that they need. And I'm out of time and I'm not done.
Thanks for stopping. Alyssa?
Thank you. I think this is a huge part because right now we are dealing with people with a labor shortage right now, and one of the big reasons we have a labor shortage is because of childcare, because of the health care, because of things that people need to be able to go to work. So I think that's a really important thing. Right now we have some childcare grants that had been put forth, and that has been helping, but we need to continue doing that. I think that's very important. I think we need a public option for healthcare, and I definitely think the accessibility for healthcare can also help with, or if we had high-speed internet all the way out to our rural areas, we would have telehealth, and that is something that we all found that we needed and could use while we were dealing with COVID. So I think that those are all really important things, and that's where I think that we could actually do a whole lot better. If we can actually do these things, then we could get people back and working, because childcare costs an insane amount of money, like $12,000 a year. So, and the childcare providers are not making very much, and they are looked at as like babysitters, but they're not. They're also teaching our children, and from age 1 to age 5 is some of the most vulnerable times for those children. So we need to make sure that we are paying our childcare people and our providers good money to be able to do that. Thank you.
Tim?
Many of the things that were embedded in that question, healthcare costs, nursing home, teachers, housing, a lot of that has one common root to it, and that is a shortage of people who are in those professions. In the city of Sartell, one time we had an Abbott Northwestern campus providing services. They have since left. When I was mayor, we had health partners here in Sartell that moved and expanded their operations in Sartell. During the COVID time, they closed. Now we are down to primarily one primary provider and a couple of small, mom and pop doc shops, if you will, in our area. One of the things that will, I think, help us with a multitude of things, and that is if we would roll back our idea about allowing 16 and 17-year-olds exposure to the construction industry. I've been working with my colleagues, Representative Damon and Senator Howe, on legislation to try to be able to do that. What we are finding and experiencing is that these folks in high school are not allowed to, they don't hear about in their training or in their career options because they're not allowed on construction sites. So many of them go to college, leave after a year, $30,000 worth of debt, and then go back to a trade school to pick up a trade, like construction, plumbing, electrical. Why don't we give them that option? We can put bumper guards in place, we can still have a safe work environment for them. Why don't we give them that opportunity? Not everybody's cut out for a 4-year or wants a 4-year degree. I think that solves a lot of our problems along the way.
Thank you. And our next question will begin with Jeff. Politics today are way too divisive, and it seems like a lot of important work does not get done because of it. How will you work with the legislative body to correct this and do the work that needs to be done?
Well, I believe I answered that when I did the introduction. I believe that it's building relationships. I tell you, if you don't build a relationship with people across the aisle, you don't get things done. And you can look at my past bills that I've had passed. Most of those, just about all of those, had bipartisan support. And some of them had people across the aisle carrying the legislation in the other body. So I think relationships make that happen. The problem with it is, and I'll tell you why it's become so divisive, is because a lot of the folks that get involved in politics at the BPOU level, the basic political organization level, are people either, a lot of times they're on the far left and they're on the far right. And so they select your candidates, and the candidates that get elected are either way left or way right, and if you're in the center, you're the dead skunk in the middle of the road. And that's what happens. So, you know, it's one thing to say that you get down there and you got to make an effort to make things go, but when there's no middle ground and you try to compromise, but we all know that I've got things that I'll never compromise on. And I know the folks on the other side of the aisle, they've got things they will never compromise on. So you gotta find the things in the middle that you can find agreement on, because the other items are non-negotiable.
Lisa?
Things have become so divisive in our communities, within families sometimes, and definitely in politics. But one of the things that I think will be better when we go back in January is for the last 2.5 years, we have only been virtual in the House. As Senator Howe has talked about the importance of building relationships, that is what it takes. You build those relationships when you are face to face. Now, I understand we needed to in the beginning. But out of the 3 committees that I've served on the last 2 years, we have not had one single meeting in person. And you can't do work like this in that manner. You build those relationships when you're sitting at a committee table, and then you get into the elevator or you walk through the tunnel and you're getting to know the person, not just what is in front of us that we're working on, but also who they are, who is their family, what do they like to do. You go out and you grab dinner with somebody. That's how we build those relationships. But I can tell you, when I was first elected and I first started serving in 2019, I thought, wow, you sit at the committee tables and people actually get along, and we get along and agree on more than we disagree on. But our media portrays it that all we do is fight. And so I think at a ground level within our own communities, if we would go ahead and get along and agree to disagree, but civilly, but also listen to each other and understand the backgrounds and where we're coming from, it's going to serve us better in our communities. And then as a legislator, the work that we do back and forth with those relationships, we will get more done for the state of Minnesota.
Alyssa?
So I think this is actually the most important job of any legislator. The gridlock that has happened is not fair to you. It's not fair to the communities. It's not fair to the people who have been waiting for things to happen. Without compromise and civil conversations, we all suffer. So we have to go back to what our nation was founded on: debate, negotiation, and compromise. If it wasn't for gridlock, everything would be better. So I think we just need to stop and talk to each other again. I think that's something that we've found in our communities, and I think it was understandable for a while. But going door knocking, I've been able to talk to some people who we just find something to talk about, get along with one thing, and you go, you know what? I'm like, we're more alike than we are different. And it has been a beautiful experience to be able to talk to people and have these neighborhood conversations again. And I think that's what we need to do. Relationships are absolutely number one, and that's exactly what we need to develop. That allows us to be able to say, hey, I know you've got a problem, and I know who can solve that. So that's part of the biggest part of our job, I believe.
So I'm going to go back to my introduction. My motivation to run was finding common ground in uncommon circumstances. When my children were going through what they went through at school, I had people on both sides that were very upset and very loud. And oftentimes I felt like I stood in the middle and everyone asked me, why aren't you angry? Well, I'm very angry, I'm furious. But I saw another part, that at the end of the day, all of us still had very similar goals, that we wanted to raise our families in the community we lived in, and we wanted safety, and we wanted our children to get an education. And I see the current state of affairs is that we've lost sight of that, where neighbors don't talk because they have signs outside, or families don't. And one of the pillars of democracy is compromise. And so when you make your way to the Capitol, you have to keep that at the forefront, and also remember that you're there to represent the people of your community, not just your best interests. But it is so divisive right now, and having candidates here that are all willing to say, I'm that person that will represent people, and I will compromise. It's incredibly important. And we just need to move away from solely voting based on political affiliation. I'm sorry I have to say it, but it's true. You have to find a representative that best meets the needs of what you're looking for.
Jim.
Thank you. I'm going to give you two examples of where I have, in my legislative career, done some amazing work, I believe, on behalf of the people in the state of Minnesota. My freshman year in the legislature, I undertook a project called dealing with our school trust lands. Very quickly, when Minnesota became a state, we had to set aside a certain amount of property in each township for the benefit of school students. And those properties were being mismanaged, and the financial resources that were being generated from that weren't properly being managed and handled. I worked together with my colleagues on the Senate side, on the House side, got unanimous support for the bill to be able to reform these things as a freshman in my first term in the legislature. Recently, when we were in the majority the last time as Republicans in the House and the Senate, we saved our pension systems here in the state of Minnesota by undertaking some pension reforms. And we, again, were very successful. We got everybody in the House and everybody in the Senate to support this. The underlying story on this is that this was during the Dayton administration, and the Commissioner of Management and Budget at that time, Myron Franz, knew that he had to go to New York to talk to the rating agencies about Minnesota's credit rating, which was AAA. And that credit rating hung in the balance. Had we not passed that bill, we were going to be downgraded in the state of Minnesota because of our unfunded pension liabilities. We got that done, we moved forward. Again, some of these things aren't real sexy to lead the 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock news, but they are very important things, because if we didn't deal with those, they would lead the 6 and 10 o'clock news.
Thank you. We've reached the end of our time for questions, and we'll begin closing statements. You will each have 1 minute to summarize why you believe your qualifications are well matched with the requirements of serving as a Minnesota legislator. And we will begin with Tim.
Well, again, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening and our sponsors for the program. I have a lifetime of service to people, whether it's through volunteer community, whether it's through local elected official in the state of Minnesota. And I am out and about in the community quite a bit. And I do feel I'm very connected to what the needs of the folks in 13BR, the Sartell Sauk Rapids, Holding Ford, Leasock Township, Holding Ford, Holding Township, and Brockway Township. These are people that I went to school with. These are people that I know and have been working with for a long time. I have the ability and the demonstrated ability to be able to lead and to get things done. On my sign it says trusted leadership, not because it's a drop line, because it's actually how I run my business when I'm dealing in the legislature. And every legislator also is a citizen legislator, which means they should be doing something else besides being in the legislature. And so like many of my colleagues here, I also have outside employment that I have to balance with being a legislator. And I think that makes you a better legislator than focusing full-time on being a legislator.
Jeff?
Well, thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to come here and participate. You know, if you ask my wife what I am, I'm a public servant. That's what I've done. I've served in the military. I've served as a firefighter, and I've served as a councilman. I've served as in the legislature. You know, and I think that public service is something that is important. But I also believe that it shouldn't be a career. And so I think you should go down there, spend some time, do what you need to do, and then I think society gets to be actually better and stronger with the more people that get the opportunity to serve. And that's why I actually voted and argued against the constitutional amendment that prohibited us from raising our own pay, because we didn't raise our pay for 18 years, because I believe that if you can't make a good case to the people that why you raised your pay, you probably shouldn't get a raise. But it passed, and now a commission sets our pay, and that's why it's so high, in my opinion.
First of all, I think change is good. We should elect new representatives with new visions and new ideas. I bring something different to the table with life experience, something that I've been very open and honest with. I've experienced what it's like to struggle. I was a single mom. I've been on social service programs. I know what works and know what doesn't work. I'm also the wife of a Black man, and I have brown children, and I understand their experiences to a different level. I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to compromise, and I'm someone who brings something different to the table. I'm that Minnesota mom that's on a mission to make the community a better place.
Alyssa.
So I didn't start down this path with political aspirations. I will say that I jumped in after the Roe leak happened. I have a trans daughter, and the next rights to go would be hers. So that is why I am here, and I'm here to fight for everyone who needs to save their rights, who needs to feel like they're allowed to be who they are. I now know that I have what it takes to make the community a better place. I've been able to connect some people. It's been a great community organization that I started a group that's huge and now is behind me as we're able to go to different places and to speak to people who don't have the voice to speak, to our different school boards and city boards and things like that. I'm just willing to fight for people who need someone to fight for them. So that's me, and I believe that we can build things better around here, better education, protect our children, heal our environment, and reconnect with loved ones lost over these political divides. Thank you.
And Lisa.
Thank you very much to our hosts for having us tonight, and for each one of you for taking the time to come and listen and to learn. We can learn from each other. It has been my absolute honor to serve my district for the last 4 years. And I have to tell you, on the wall in my office in St. Paul, I have the name of every one of our cities in 13A and every one of the townships. It goes floor to ceiling. I look at that when I am in my office, and the reason I did that is because I needed to make sure that I would remember when in St. Paul, I wanted to remember not just the people that voted for me, but I 100% your representative in 13A. And I needed to first make decisions based on what would be best for my constituents, and then, first of all, does it make sense? What would be best for my constituents, and then also would it be the right thing for Minnesota? So with my business experience, my elected official experience on the school board, I bring common sense Central Minnesota values to St. Paul in a way that serves us well, and I would value your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to members of the general public for emailing questions. Thank you, audience members, for attending and submitting written questions. Thank you to each of the candidates for running for public office and for participating in this forum. Thank you to the City of Sartell for the use of this room. A link to a recording of this event will be posted on the League of Women Voters St. Cloud Area website, LWVSCA.org. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not those of the sponsor. Sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the sponsors of any of the candidates. And now it's up to the voters. I hope you continue to become informed about candidates and issues. Let your voices be heard by voting. Candidates, good luck on November 8th.